The letter had promised a crowd at the station, laughter spilling like coins, a preacher clearing his throat, maybe a borrowed bouquet pinned crooked with hope. She had pictured faces leaning forward to see her step down, imagined a name spoken aloud so she'd know it belonged to her now. Instead, the platform was a strip of weathered boards and silence. The wind worried at her hat ribbon, tugging like it wanted to unmake her. When the train hissed and lurched and finally pulled away, it took warmth with it, leaving behind a smell of coal and endings. She stood there with her suitcase between her boots, leather scuffed, corners rounded from too many hands, and whispered to the empty air, no one came. She didn't cry. Crying would have meant someone might notice, and there was no one to notice. The town beyond the station looked like it was holding its breath, false front buildings crouched low, windows half-lidded, a hitching rail with more shadows than horses. Her gloves were too thin, the cold crept in anyway, a quiet thief. She folded the letter once more, though she knew the words by heart, and tucked it back into her coat like a talisman that had failed her. She tried to tell herself this was still better than turning back. Better than the rooms she'd left, where echoes remembered her too well. Better than a future measured in borrowed kindness. The promise had been simple. A man who needed a wife, a place that needed hands, a life that needed starting. She'd crossed miles on that promise, stitched courage into every mile. And now, nothing. Hoofbeats broke the spell. They came slow at first, cautious, then clearer, the sound of iron meeting wood and dirt with purpose. She looked up, heart skidding, and saw him crest the small rise beyond the tracks. One rider, no wagon, no crowd, dust haloed his horse as he reined in, the animal's ears flicking, alert. He dismounted without hurry, as if time itself would wait if he asked it to. When he took off his hat, it wasn't a flourish. It was a small, respectful thing, like closing a door softly. "You must be her," he said, and his voice had the steadiness of a fence post set deep. She nodded because speech felt too fragile to risk. He didn't ask why she was alone. He didn't look back toward town as if expecting others to appear late and apologetic. He simply took in the way she stood, the suitcase, the letter corner peeking from her coat. His eyes were the color of creek water after rain, clear, but carrying weight. "I'm sorry," he said, and she believed he meant it. Not as an apology for himself, but for the world's habit of failing at the worst times. He offered his arm. The sleeve was rough, mended at the elbow, warm. When she took it, the contact grounded her, like touching something that had always been where it was meant to be. "Sun's dropping," he added, glancing west where the light thinned. "Roads not kind after dark." They walked to his horse together. He lifted her suitcase with care, setting it behind the saddle as if it held more than clothes. As he helped her up, his hand hovered, asking without words. She nodded again, and he steadied her, firm and brief, then swung up himself. From the saddle, the town looked smaller, less certain. She swallowed. She began, then stopped. Names felt like promises, and she wasn't sure which promises still counted. "I know," he said gently. "We'll sort the rest on the way." As they turned from the station, she looked back once, just once, at the empty boards in the place where hope had waited and gone. The horse stepped into the road, sure-footed, and the wind shifted, carrying them forward. Somewhere ahead, a lamp would be lit. Somewhere behind, the train's echo faded. Between those two things, she rode with a stranger who had come. Alone, and somehow, that made all the difference. They rode with the sky bleeding orange behind the hills, the kind of color that made promises feel possible even when they were frayed at the edges. The horse moved at an easy, thoughtful pace, as if it understood the weight of first journeys. She sat straight, hands folded in her lap, the saddle creaking beneath her with each step. The wind carried the scent of sage and dust, and something sweeter she couldn't name. He kept to the front, but not so far that she felt abandoned. Every so often, when the trail narrowed or dipped, he glanced back, checking without staring, a habit that felt practiced and protective. They didn't speak at first. Silence settled between them, not awkward, just careful. It gave her time to notice things, the way the land opened and closed like a breathing chest, the rhythm of hooves matching her pulse, the sound of leather and metal whispering together. She wondered if he always rode this quietly or if tonight asked for it. When the road forked, he lifted a hand, signaling without words, and turned toward the longer path. "Safer," he said simply, as if safety were a direction you could choose. The quiet loosened her tongue. She told him about the letters, how they'd come regular as a heartbeat, ink a little slanted, words steady. He'd written of fences mended after storms, of a well that needed deepening, of evenings that grew too long when there was no one to share them with. He'd asked if she minded work, if she could cook more than beans, if she believed a home was something you built with your hands and kept with your patience. She told him she'd answered honestly. She always had. She told him she'd imagined a welcome at the station because the letters had felt like a welcome already. He listened like it mattered. Not like a man waiting to speak, but like one collecting truths. When she paused, he didn't rush her. He let the horse step around stones, let the sky dim another shade. Letters don't always tell the whole story, he said at last. But they tell what a man hopes for. A creek crossed the trail, water catching the last light in quicksilver flashes. He dismounted first, boots sinking into damp earth, and tested the stones with his heel. Wait, he said, holding up a hand. He crossed, then turned back and offered his arm again. She slid down, skirt gathered, and felt the cold kiss her ankles as she stepped. His grip was sure, not tight, and when she wobbled on a slick stone, he steadied her without comment. On the far bank, he helped her up again, checking the cinch with a practiced tug before mounting. "Town's been jumpy," he said as they rode on, voice lowered. "Been talk, men passing through, asking questions they shouldn't." The words settled heavy. She hugged herself, the evening suddenly sharp. "About what?" she asked. He hesitated, eyes scanning the scrub and the line of cottonwoods ahead. "About women alone," he said. "About things that aren't theirs to take." Fear flickered, quick and bright. Then why come alone? The question slipped out before she could soften it. The horse's ears twitched. The world seemed to lean closer to hear the answer. He slowed, turning in the saddle to meet her gaze. Dusk caught the lines at his eyes, the weather written there. "Because crowds draw trouble," he said. "And because I know these roads." He looked ahead again, setting the pace. "I rode alone to keep you safe." It wasn't a boast. There was no pride in it, only resolve, like stating the weather or the lay of land. Something in her chest loosened, a knot she hadn't known how to name. They rode on as night found them, stars pricking the sky one by one. Once, a shadow moved in the brush, and his hand went to his rifle without drama, then relaxed when the sound passed. She watched him, the way he watched the dark, and realized safety wasn't the absence of danger, it was someone willing to stand between you and it. By the time a warm glow appeared ahead, low and steady, she was tired in the best way, like after a long walk towards something real. The cabin waited, lamp already lit, and for the first time since the train left her, she felt the ground beneath her. Future night wrapped the cabin in a quiet so complete it felt intentional, like the world had agreed to look the other way. The lamp in the window burned steady, a soft gold that spilled onto the porch and caught the dust in the air. He dismounted first and tied the horse with a murmured word, the animal settling like it trusted the place. When he helped her down, he didn't rush, didn't assume. He waited for her nod before his hands found her waist, brief and careful, then gone. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and coffee grounds and something clean. Not new, lived in, tended. A small table stood near the hearth, two chairs pulled close as if conversation had been invited before she ever arrived. He struck a match, coaxed the stove awake, and set water to heat. The ordinary motion steadied her more than speeches could have. She set her suitcase by the wall, fingers lingering on the handle, as if testing whether she could let go. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said quietly, back turned as he measured grounds. "When the letters stopped, I figured the train had carried my hopes further than it should." "They didn't stop," she replied. "Mine kept coming, yours too. I thought." She stopped, unsure where the truth might bruise. "I thought the station would be louder." He nodded, accepting the shape of that. "Town meant to come," he said. Then the talk started. Folks decided quiet was safer. He poured the water, the kettle singing. "I decided quiet was worse." He set a cup in front of her, steam rising like a promise kept. She wrapped her hands around it, warmth seeping into her bones. "I don't need grand welcomes," she said after a moment. "Just truth." He leaned against the table, arms crossed, giving her his full attention. "Then here it is. I'll guard what's mine with my life," he said, voice steady, "but I won't cage you. You came on your own feet. You'll stay the same way, or leave, by your own choosing." The words settled between them, heavy and gentle all at once. Outside, something moved, an owl, perhaps, or a passing deer, and moved on. The world kept its distance. She looked at the cabin again. The mended chair rung, the neatly stacked wood, the single photograph on the shelf of a younger man with a horse and too much sky behind him. A life shaped by work and waiting. She set her cup down and finally let go of the suitcase handle. The sound it made, soft against the floor, felt like a decision. I crossed a long way to be here, she said. I'm not afraid of work. I'm afraid of being unseen. He pushed off the table, taking a step closer, stopping where the space still belonged to her. Then see me, he said. And let me see you. They ate bread and beans by the fire, talking in low voices. She told him about the rooms she'd left, the kindness that came with conditions, the nights spent listening to trains and imagining names. He told her about winters that pressed too close, about fixing fences alone and realizing silence could be a companion or a warning depending on how you treated it. When she laughed, soft, surprised, his smile answered it, slow and bright, like dawn finding a place no one else had thought to look. Later, he showed her the small room at the back, the quilt folded neat, the window facing east. You'll have the morning, he said. It's good for starting things. He paused at the door. I'll take the chair. She shook her head. We'll take tomorrow, she said instead. When he finally smiled, it wasn't triumph. It was relief. Outside, the lamp burned on, a signal to nothing and everything. She lay awake for a while, listening to the house breathe, to the steady presence of a man who had ridden alone through dark to keep her safe. For the first time since the train had pulled away, the future didn't feel like an empty platform. It felt like a road, one they could choose, together.